Shalom, Kal Halalim La Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Racha HaKodash, double honors to the apostles, elders, and bishops of GMS that rule well, and salutations and blessings to you elect, starting with 144,000 on down. So this is just some more history information on the Carthaginians and precisely them visiting the New World, so to speak, or I should say the old New World. Esau calls it the New World because it was new to him. All right, but this is an old world spanning from the time of King Solomon to the Israelites leaving Assyria and dwelling there, as various groups, North, Central, and South America. The Carthaginians having a big presence, then the Moors, So this is from a book titled Saga America by Barry Fell. Okay. And I just want to get this snippet right here. This is an understanding of how vast, the ancient world was. As you see here, Carthage, 261 BC, 1,500 ships carried 150,000 men. Rome, right, 32 BC, 2,000 ships, 200,000. And the Spanish Armada in 1588, 120 ships, 27,000. Okay. And by the way, they've also found Roman coins in the Americas, but that was during the time of really Jake's Israelites. All right, because you had coins of Septimius Severus found in America, in the USA. Okay. And of course, the knowledge and understanding from the Canaanites, who people call the Phoenicians, that knowledge was transferred to the Israelites, and then finally the Israelites in Rome, right, who had these large ships and the capabilities. So anyway, this is from the chapter 3, the Carthaginians in America, and I'm going to skip around. Page 49, as in the case of the work done in preparation for writing my previous book, far-ranging travel was required. My colleagues and I visited the ancient sites of Carthaginian settlements in North Africa and Spain, and also the ruined cities of peoples who were allies of the Carthaginians, or whose mariners sailed on Carthaginian ships. We visited archaeologists and historians who work on these old world sites and discussed our American findings with them. This guy is not a low-level scholar or historian. As you see, this person travels and he swaps notes. So he has a lot of experience and information. He's not hypothesizing. He's giving you his findings, letting you know his findings. Okay. I'll read down. It says, then, encouraged by their enthusiasm and obvious confidence in the validity of our researches here, we returned to America to implement their suggestions. We consulted widely with American investigators interested in the problem, sought and obtained their assistance where special skills were demanded. Then, finally, some of the colleagues overseas whom we had visited now came to America to see for themselves. Salakia. See for themselves the evidence we had reported, and to lend us their skills. Okay, page 50. The Phoenicians, as most people know, were an ancient trading people of Semitic origin. They spoke, and again, the Phoenicia goes back to pretty much the purple dye, which we're going to get into here. But they were not Semitic. They were mainly Hamitic, and you had Israelites with them. And later on, the great Phoenicians, the greatness of the Phoenicians was mainly attributed to the Israelites, as pertaining to the fact that we are the salt of the earth, okay? And we make things great. We make things vibrant, we make things pop. All right, the fashion and whatnot, that's from the Jacobites, the Yasharallah. So it says, they spoke a language akin to that of the ancient Hebrews and frequently wrote it in much the same alphabetic letters as the ancient Hebrews used. One of these settlements grew into a powerful city-state apparently named Carcadona and located in a bay at the northern tip of Tunisia. The Greeks and Romans and we today call this city Carthage, Quarath Khadash, new city, right? Thus the Phoenicians were now separated into an eastern or Lebanese branch and a western or Carthaginian stock. Both groups were famous for the purple cloth they manufactured by a secret dyeing process utilizing the pigment of a sea snail called murex. The Greeks named the traders who brought such wares the purple people, Phonica, from which we get our word Phoenician. The Romans called them Punici, which means the same, okay, or Punic. But that purple dye, it was so valuable, man. At one point, this thing was valued as its weight in gold. And the later the Roman Empire progressed, there was a time where they pretty much had to cut off this resource for the nobles, for the royalty, pretty much. And purple was always a royal color because it was very hard. You needed blue and red, which a blue dye and red dye was already upper echelon. That was like, oh, that's fancy. But purple was high class. Okay. From down at the bottom, from early times, the Carthaginians were famed mariners. They had to be, for their principal wares were rather cheap imitations of Greek and Egyptian goods, and their principal buyers were savage or semi-civilized peoples in distant lands that produced the raw materials the Carthaginians needed to supply their factories. Tin is one of the raw materials essential in the manufacture of hardened bronze, and hence for the making of swords and other weapons, armor, and domestic tools. For bronze is an alloy of tin and copper. Somehow the Carthaginians learned that a supply of tin existed in an unknown land to the north of Spain. They themselves obtained it by bartering with the Celts of northwestern France. As no other source of tin was available to the Greeks and Romans, the Carthaginians established a complete monopoly, which they jealously protected by blockading the Straits of Gibraltar, so that no foreign vessel could leave or enter the Atlantic without their knowledge and permission. The Illyrian historian Strabo, who lived in Yugoslavia in the same century as Christ, recounts an ancient story of how Romans tried to discover the source of the tin. A Roman masquerader as an ally of the Carthaginians, and took his ship into the port of Gades in southern Spain. When his spies reported the Carthaginian trader was about to sail for the Tin Isles, the Roman vessel sneaked along astern. The Punic captain soon discovered that he was being followed, and he ran his ship ashore on the coast of Portugal, he and his crew making their way overland back to Gades. When he was told his story, he was rewarded by the merchant princes of the town and given a new ship to replace his loss. At length, the Carthaginians themselves, tired of being dependent upon the Celtic middlemen of France, which these were Israelites as well for the most part. So this is just showing you that, Israelites had trade all over, okay? Even in their Gentile state of mind, they obviously linked up in the spirit. Maybe some of them knew they were Israelites, a lot of them didn't. because they were obviously worshiping other gods and just being in a Gentile state of mind. And this sets up the perfect scenario for the Gentiles of the New Testament, the Galatians, the Corinthians, the barbarians, the Scythians, you know? That's why you wacky tacky, no brain having Christians, okay? The New Testament, John 3:16, the New Testament, God loves all. This is a lot of history about Israelites being scattered, man. Hence they're known as the lost sheep of the house of Israel. They're lost, you know? And determined to find out for themselves exactly where the mines were located, a navigator named Himilco sailed from Gades, following the usual northern track, skirting the coast of Portugal, and then northeast across the Bay of Biscay to Brittany. Here he asked which ships were bringing tin to the Breton market, and learned that the vessels were manned by Celts related to the Bretons by race and language. And Breton again goes back to Barayath, which means covenant, or the covenant people. Okay? It says, and who came from an island that lay to the north of Brittany. Following these directions, Himilco now seems to have encountered the Channel Islands and then the coast of Britain, either Cornwall or Devon, as commercial interests invariably governed Carthaginian policy. It is not surprising that the record of Himilco's voyage is woefully incomplete. We cannot tell if he established trading relations with the ancient Britons or not, for Punic sources are silent on the matter, and direct archaeological evidence in the shape of Punic inscription in Britain are not forthcoming for his particular voyage. It stands to reason that Carthage would not advertise such matters to the world at large. Of course, if you have such a resource, you don't want to advertise. You want to be the sole, supplier of that. It says, for the merchant princes who constituted her government certainly would not permit the release of such information. Okay, this is soon after the 1976 publication of America BC, in which inscriptions in ancient Mediterranean languages were reported from the eastern parts of North America. It was discovered that many supposed Indian petroglyphs of the western states are also ancient inscriptions above a prayer for rain in the Punic language of Carthage. At Massacre Lake, Nevada, originally reported by a professional archaeologist in 1958, though not then recognized as writing. And this is clearly Paleo-Hebrew. All right? Ancient Paleo-Lashawan Kodash. All right? It says Carthaginian rural satire masks with Pan's ears. A carved on rock face near Wichita, Kansas, from Sardinia in Carthaginian occupation until the Punic Wars. Carthaginian coins of the 4th to 3rd century BC have been found along the Arkansas River, both upstream and downstream from Wichita. Okay? So page 72 reads, as I pointed out in America BC, there is a second route to America, one that makes use of the favorable trade winds that blow from east to west in latitudes south of 30 degrees north. It was the route followed by Columbus, which leads from the Canary Islands to the Caribbean. The disadvantage is the vast ocean gap to be covered, as opposed to the route described by Plutarch. His northern route also has east to west winds and has a comforting chain of island halfway houses. It is the route followed by the Norsemen, but its disadvantage lies in the severe weather. However, in 1977, Dr. Timothy Severin demonstrated that even a frail Irish Celtic skinboat can sail that route. As Irish historians have always claimed, I see only sweet common sense in the Plutarch and the Irish sages, and have little patience with the armchair critics of Washington, many people feel the same way. Although no Carthaginian antiquities or coins seem to have been reported as yet from Cuba, it would appear that this island was known to the Carthaginians, as evidenced by the following passage from the historical writings of the Sicilian annalist Diodorus Siculus, who flourished in the first century before Christ. He writes, "The Phoenicians were at a very early period driven by the violence of the wind far beyond the Pillars of Hercules or Straits of Gibraltar, out into the Atlantic Ocean, to the west of Africa, at many days' sailing distance from that continent. They discovered an enormous island that was fertile and finely watered by navigable rivers. This discovery was soon known to the Carthaginians of Africa and to the Etruscans of Italy. The Carthaginians then undertook a voyage to this new region after one of the hostile invasions by Moors and Tyrians, in the course of which they passed through the Straits of Gibraltar, advancing beyond Cadiz till they reached the region and there made a settlement." All right. So that was it. That was a point on Cuba, but I didn't save that other part because they mentioned that they never went back to Cuba, and I wanted to make a point on that because that makes very good sense, because the Israelites were already there, and that's the tribe of Manasseh. Manasseh is known as a warrior tribe. So when they went over there, and they, as it says, a violent invasion, hostile invasion, the Moors tried to go over. They couldn't fuck with them. The Manassites fucked them up, and they didn't go back. Okay. So let's go here. This is page 74. America and the Punic Wars. The greatest war in classical times was the life and death struggle between the two powers of the Western Mediterranean, Rome and Carthage. It was fought out in 3 agonizing episodes that left Rome exhausted and Carthage in total ruin. Her surviving population scattered across North Africa as refugees in the powerful Libyan army then empire that arose from the ashes of the cities of the Western Phoenicians. During the 4th century BC, Rome had expanded her political and military control to embrace the greater part of Italy, as one by one the independent Etruscan, Celtic, Campanian, and Greek city-states of the peninsula fell into her orbit. In the interim, Carthage had invaded the islands of Sicily, Sardinia, and Corsica. By the beginning of the 3rd century BC, Carthage had adjusted the weights of her coinage to match those who used in Egypt and Cyprus. Now one great common market trading community extended from Egypt across North Africa to Spain. Most of it was under the control of wealthy financiers, who also comprised the Council of 100 that governed Carthage, and which selected the 2 Sufit, or judges. The word is shapat, I believe. Well, shapat means to judge, but judges, in the Hebrew sense, who put their wishes into effect. Okay, I wanted to just get this. It was actually the Council of 104, right? It was a Carthaginian tribunal of judges. They were created early in Carthage's history and are described in Aristotle's Politics as the highest constitutional authority. It says the 104 were in charge of judging generals in the military who exercised a great deal of independence from the government. In Carthage, the 104 were intended to provide a check to ensure the military served the needs of the Senate and the people. However, by the time of Hannibal, in his stint as Sufit, or judge, okay, so word, shapat, right? The 104 had acquired tyrannical power. That's Jake. Jake. Hey, power corrupts, as we know. So by mid-century, two powerful nations were in confrontation. Rome guarded the access to the pine forests of Italy and Gaul, which yielded the timbers required for building ships, and in particular for maintaining a powerful navy, something still quite unfamiliar to Romans. Carthage exercised a total control of tin, the essential component of bronze, still the major metal of weapons of war and industrial and household tools, as well as the sole metal employed in Roman currency. The Roman Senate comprised patrician families to whom wealth was rapidly becoming a means of power, and from whose ranks the two consuls were chosen to put their wishes into effect. Conflict between Carthage and Rome was inevitable. A pretext for Roman interference in Sicily was afforded by an appeal from Sicilian Greeks in 264 BC. Each Carthaginian ship of the line was a quinquereme, a ship so large that it required 5 rowers to each oar on account of the length of oar needed to reach the sea. There were 50 or more of these large oars, making a crew of at least 250 rowers, together with officers, and 120 marines for a complement of 400 men. Okay. Page 76. Consider another unexplained and mysterious event in Carthaginian history, not mentioned at all by the ancient historians, but discovered by the painstaking researches of modern numismatists. I don't know what that word. While the initial issues of Carthaginian coinage were silver pieces, on the model of those issued by such powerful Greek cities as Syracuse, the nature of the coinage underwent a sudden and dramatic change around 300 BC, when very large quantities of gold coins began to be minted. More accurately, the coinage was gold to which a small amount of silver had been added, the light yellow metal called electrum by the ancients. At the same time, the emblem Arethusa disappears from the coins to be replaced by a Tanith, the native Carthaginian goddess, spouse of Bel, who was depicted as a classical portrait of a woman bedecked with pendant earrings and necklace. Okay, and that electrum, right? We look it up. Electrum coins printed by the Carthaginians in North Africa, Sicily, and Sardinia. Electrum is a naturally occurring alloy of silver and gold. Yeah, so, and that's interesting. Where did they get that large source? As it says, 300 BC. Okay, page 77, it says, from the ancient historians, we learned that when the Second Punic War began in 218 BC, Carthage no longer regarded her navy as of any great significance as a weapon of war, and the entire series of campaigns for the whole 18 years of the Second War was conducted as a land operation. The invasion of Italy by Hannibal was performed not by landing troops from transports, but instead by crossing the Alps from Gaul. Putting together the facts elicited by numismatists and those derived from ancient historians, we find that there was a sudden, unexplained increase in holdings of Carthaginian gold between 300 and 241 BC. And 2, Carthage was unable to replace any of her naval quinqueremes after 255 BC and ceased to be a major naval power after 241 BC. Is it possible these unexplained facts are in some way related to America? Until 1976, we had no tangible evidence that Carthaginians were ever present in America, though a careful reading of Plutarch implies that they did make regular voyages to northeastern North America. We are in possession of more historical facts than before 1976, and the time is ripe to take another look at the unexplained questions. And this is a coin. I believe this was found or coins of Byzantine coins. All right, and you can see this guy. You can see that. Yeah, he got braids. But some of these are drawings of the coins. So like this guy, he looks like Caesar, but this guy, you could tell that's a Jake. You know. Anyway, that was pretty much it on that. A little bit more information and history on the Carthaginians and how vast, like when we read about the ships and the oars, man, that was crazy. You have 50 men just working the oars. All right. Anyway, kahalaliyam la Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rachakudash. Shalom.